Hello, my name is Ron Cochran, and I'd like to welcome you to MassDEP's presentation of this webinar. And this topic is a deep dive into pay as you throw.
I'd like to introduce you to our team this morning. So again, my name is Ron Cochran. I am a regional planner here at MassDEP. I am also the Municipal Assistance Coordinator, the MAC, for Region NE1. And we also have Missy Hollenbeck, who is a fellow Municipal Assistance Coordinator, Kathy Merzer, who is the branch chief at Municipal Waste Reduction. Julia Green, who is another Municipal Assistance Coordinator, and Rachel Smith, who is our grants manager here at MassDEP, but formerly you may know her from Pay-As-You-Throw fame, as she was in the spot that I'm in now as the Pay-As-You-Throw grant manager previously. Okay, so a little unconventional, but we thought we would go right into a poll question because we really want to see where everyone is at with Pay-As-You-Throw.
Yeah, the question is, where is your city or town in the process of implementing pay-as-you-throw? Early research and discovery hasn't been discussed too much yet, or perhaps it's openly discussed among administration and officials, or you're moving toward adopting it within the next 1 to 2 years, or you already have a form of pay-as-you-throw, but you're trying to improve that. So you can see that a lot of people, it looks like a very similar amount are in either the very early research space, or they already have a form of pay-as-you-throw that they're trying to improve, and a smaller number are in the other two options.
Thank you, Kathy. And we do, I'm glad to see that. We did want to get folks that were early in, but we do feel there'll also be value for those that are trying to improve a program. But just a small mention, we are going to do a deep dive on that topic in the fall, a similar webinar to what we're having here, but specifically on those communities that have already adopted it that are looking to improve upon it. So why don't we get right into this? So pay-as-you-throw, what is it and why do we think, and when I say we here at folks here at MassDEP, why do we think it's so important? So I'll start by a definition. Pay-as-you-throw is a waste management system where households are charged based on the amount of trash they dispose. This model encourages waste reduction and recycling by making disposal costs directly proportional to the volume of waste generated. We look at pay-as-you-throw here at MassDEP as the single most effective way to reduce your municipal solid waste. How do we know this? And it's really simple. It's because the data shows us this. When you folks respond to your surveys that we ask you to do in our grant process, we get data from you. And we analyze this data. We like to see where everybody is. And when we consistently, over the years, we've consistently analyzed that data, and we've seen that pay-as-you-throw is the single most way to impact your municipal solid waste. So we put that data here on this map to show you, to illustrate the power of pay-as-you-throw. So this map shows household pounds per year, per household pounds, and the green being the least, and that sort of brownish red color being the most. And then importantly, there's a crosshair section that shows you those communities that have implemented pay-as-you-throw. And it's not surprising that the ones that you see that are more in the green and the yellow are the ones that tend to have that lower household pounds per year. And we also see that these communities have kind of an influential effect on the ones that are around them. And we're going to get more into that later in our presentation. But the real question is, why does it work so well? And I thought the best way to do this, to show this example, is a parallel example that really kind of nobody questions, and that is water usage. It's a utility. Like anything that you use in excess, whether it be any kind of utility like electricity, or in this case, our example of water, you do pay for what you use. So if you are taking those marathon showers or getting that beautiful green lawn, you know very well that the bill is going to reflect that decision that you made at the end of the month. But we also know that some folks have different goals when they approach, these kinds of decisions, but the results are the same. So no matter what your goals are. So in this illustration here, we have somebody who's maybe more interested in the environmental impact of water reduction or water conservation. And then we have another person who may be more interested in just saving that as reducing that bill, that household bill that they have to deal with every month. But when we bring this example to the waste side of things, we notice it's really kind of the same decision-making process. Your residents, whether or not they're more on the side of conservation or environmental, or whether or not they just really want to save a few bucks, the results are the same when we implement a pay-as-you-throw model with our municipal solid waste. So I'd like to now pass the presentation along to Kathy, who's going to talk about some early considerations in planning for pay-as-you-throw.
Thanks, Ron. And good morning, everybody. I'm Kathy Mirza, and as Ron mentioned, I'm the branch chief for Municipal Waste Reduction Programs here at MassDEP, and have been working on these programs closely with a lot of communities for many years. I'm delighted that there are so many people here today that want to learn more about pay-as-you-throw and how this type of program could strengthen the trash program in your communities. Right out the gate, it's important to know that there are many ways to craft these types of pay-as-you-throw and waste reduction programs so that it really is tailored to your community. So I'm just going to take a few minutes up front here to share a couple of the early considerations that can inform some of the steps in the process. So that would be next slide, please, Ron. Okay. So first, in order to find success with your solid waste program, you really want to start with being very clear about your goals. Are you trying to solve a problem that you currently are experiencing, or are you trying to strengthen your program in order to reduce waste, save money? I think every single community I've ever worked with really does speak about saving money, of course, having a cost-effective program. You may even have a number of different goals that you're trying to achieve. But this list here really just kind of puts the spotlight on some of the common goals that communities have identified as the real catalysts for program change. They want to reduce trash and their associated costs because they're seeing that they're generating a lot in their community, maybe more compared to their neighbors on a per household basis. Maybe they're working to make the program more equitable so that the way households are served and the way fees are set, that it's set up more like a utility so that there's a fairness component in the fees. It could be about incentivizing waste reduction, reuse, recycling, repair, composting, and all those other more beneficial ways to handle our discards. It may be about increasing resident participation in your city or town program, or perhaps you're looking at automated collection of trash at the curb, but you don't want to see your trash tonnage increase. Hopefully, you're trying to lower your carbon footprint and thinking about the state's solid waste management goals of we're trying to reduce waste by 30% by 2030. So we've got some lofty goals, and we know that municipalities are partners with us in that work. One other thing I'd suggest always is to talk with vendors and service providers well in advance of making any changes to your program so that you can get a deep understanding of some of the options that are available to you in your region. Next slide, please, Ron. So it's also beneficial to get a pulse on other solid waste programs in communities that are adjacent to yours. It's sometimes overlooked, but it can be really important. Do they have a pay-as-you-throw program? And if so, what color bags do they use? Okay, you wouldn't want your bags to be the same color. It can be confusing to residents, and it can kind of undercut a program if they look similar, but they really are set up differently. Or do your neighbors charge bulky waste fees? If items can be reused or recycled, that's obviously first and foremost, but if it's sent away as trash, then it's bulky waste. And you want to think of that as a component of your pay-as-you-throw program. It's certainly something to consider. Also, do perhaps your neighboring communities use wheeled carts for curbside collection of trash? And some residents want to be like the Joneses and have carts too. But the key is, if you were to go down that path, is what cart size would you provide, and how would that retain the strengths of your program or take you on a path to meeting your goals? So, and you also want to think about the complementary programs that your municipality either currently has or could add to your diversion so that it would help residents be successful with any type of pay-as-you-throw program you're considering. Next slide, please. So this is just a very brief example of about neighbors and why it matters. If your neighbors employ a pay-as-you-throw program, you're going to want to get an understanding of how your community fits into that and how your program compares relative. And here's an example why, and I've seen this happen a number of times in different parts of the state, but these are just a few snapshots. On the left, you'll see a snip from Western Massachusetts. It's from the map that Ron just shared a few moments ago, the trash disposed on a per household basis. And you can see Irving in the middle there on the left, that's yellow. The communities around Irving all have the crosshatch, they have pay-as-you-throw, and they're a bit greener. So that means they have less trash disposed on a per household basis. On the right-hand side, this is just an example from Northeastern Mass, just to kind of share the story. Essex is in the middle of an air region where the communities around them have pay-as-you-throw programs who are also high-performing programs as well. In the ideal world, we might see pay-as-you-throw implemented on a more regional basis so that we didn't have the fluctuations between cities and towns, but in Massachusetts, it is done one town at a time. I can tell you sort of as a success story here for Irving is that not long after this was shared, I learned that they did implement in 2021 a pay-as-you-throw program. It was a modified version of that, and they experienced a 30% reduction in trash almost immediately after they implemented their pay-as-you-throw program. So this is the kind of impact that's very common when a community transitions to PAYT. So these are just some of the things I wanted to highlight up front. I'm going to hand this over to Julia Green right now, who'll discuss how your municipal contracts can play an important role with program success. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kathy. All right, next slide, Ron. So trash limits equal waste reduction, and pay-as-you-throw is about limiting trash. This picture was taken in Methuen before they moved to a cart system. They had an ordinance that specified 50 pounds per week. No one knew what that looked like, and there was no enforcement. Methuen had the highest pounds per household of trash in the state at that time. So next slide. So trash limits should be in the contract. So even before we talk about pay-as-you-throw and limiting trash in that system, I want to emphasize that every municipal contract should have a specified trash limit in the contract. In this first example of a non-pay-as-you-throw trash limit, it reads, trash limits non-PAYT, the waste limit of up to 1 70-gallon container or 2 35-gallon containers per household per week provided by and set out by the residents will be enforced by the hauler through the use of non-compliance stickers. This way, you are telling the hauler in the contract what about 50 pounds of trash looks like by describing the container size. 50 pounds, just saying 50 pounds doesn't give any information. This helps, but it also helps to have someone on the street doing enforcement and working with the hauler to enforce. Otherwise, the hauler will just take everything because they don't want to be accused of missed collections later on. So on this next example, and we're going to go back to PAYT. So this is PAYT bags at the curbside. And it is a great trash limit because trash collection is limited to only PAYT bags that are usually bright colors with a town seal stamped on it. The hauler doesn't pick anything else up. The resident is also limiting trash because they have to pay for the PAYT bag. And so they try to keep their costs down by diverting everything that is divertible, recycling, food waste, textiles, etc. So the next PAYT 35-gallon cart program, you get the same effect. The carts are uniform and easily identifiable to the hauler. Usually the municipality is paying for the 35-gallon cart disposal, so the first 35 gallons is perceived to be free to the resident, although they still pay it through the tax base or trash fees. Most cart programs include overflow bags, which look the same as pay-as-you-throw bags. Again, the bags are easily identifiable to the hauler, so if it's not in a cart or bag, it doesn't get collected. So all the language in these examples was taken from actual contracts. You should also add a penalty under liquidated damages for hauler failure to enforce trash limits at the curb. But pay-as-you-throw is the best way to enforce trash limits. So the next slide, please. Oh, no. Oh, where's the, yeah. Size matters. So this is just an example. So when we're focused on trash limits, the best way to do it is in a specific container, right? So in containers, bags, and 35-gallon carts and other cart sizes consistently limit trash, unlike undefined trash limits or ordinances. The size matters graph shows the average pounds per household for each bag and cart size. Having a uniform size container that is easily identifiable prevents situations like what Methuen was dealing with before they moved to carts. But I also want to emphasize, when you go up on cart size, your trash pounds per household are going to go up too. And you can see that clearly in this chart. So the next slide. Whoop.
Oh, back, sorry. There we go.
Oh, okay. Oh, I guess they were in different
Sorry,
order.
must have had them mixed up.
Okay, that's okay. So trash limits and diversion opportunities equal success. So one thing is getting the container, whether it's a bag or it's a 35-gallon cart, right? The next is having a 95-gallon cart for recycling if you're in a cart system, so that, again, it's a large container. We want people recycling. We want them to see that visual. Another way is offering all these diversion opportunities, including food waste collection. You can either enter into a food waste collection contract and provide that with your municipal hauling contract, or you can do a preferred vendor contract where people sign up and they themselves pay for subscriptions, but that a lot of these preferred vendor contracts will have a discounted price. The next is textile collection, curbside, and drop-off. Having these, again, it's just an easy diversion opportunity for your municipal residents. Having a recycling center for drop-off, cardboard, and other hard-to-recycle materials, if you have the space and room for it, is another great option to add. Giving all these diversion opportunities will help people to keep any divertible, any recyclable or hard to recyclable material out of the trash. So then when it gets to the 35 gallons of trash per week per household, it's easy. And I love this visual. The first picture is a street scene from Cambridge. And you can clearly see like how orderly it is and that there's a lot of opportunity to divert. So next slide. So last thing I want to talk about is pay-as-you-throw bags in their on-state contract. And when you get the copy of this presentation, you can just use that hyperlink and get to what we call FAC 86. It's the master blanket purchase order, and you can also see the price list. So don't reinvent the wheel by going out to bid. Use the state contract. So the state contracts save time. They offer state negotiated pricing, prompt pay discounts, bulk purchasing pricing, extended warranties, while providing best value for your municipality. But the other important thing to note is that if you're able to negotiate, the negotiated price list in a state contract is the ceiling price. You can negotiate a lower price and still use the state contract. You don't have to go off of state contract. So we're really just emphasizing that you should use the state contract. It's there for you. It's all set up. It's the easiest thing to do for pay-as-you-throw bags. Okay, I think the next slide, and then I'm just gonna pass it back to Ron, who's gonna talk about the political challenges.
Thank you, Julia. So let's talk about some of these political challenges that we certainly know that a lot of you folks either have faced already or may face at some point in the future along this pay-as-you-throw journey. So, we have a cute illustration here of the monsters under the bed, right? So let's really just kind of like take back the blanket, look at what they are, and I love the metaphor here that in most cases they're not as scary as you think they are, but certainly they have to be laid out there for this plan of pay-as-you-throw to be successful. So let's go down the list here. Our first one, we hear these all the time, by the way, so this is how we created this list. Our residents will flood us with complaints. What if they don't comply? Putting out that rhetoric like this is a double tax. I already pay for my trash. Once they implement it, people are going to be throwing their trash bags in the street or quietly tucking it into other places to save the money. Where with the unicorn effect, there's just no way this is going to work in our city. We're just too unique. And who's going to administer this program? We can't hire new staff, so who's going to take care of all this? What if we change our programs to another model at some point in the future? How is this going to impact that? And then a couple of big ones that I think a lot of elected officials and administrators worry about, which is a resident initiative petition, right? They do have the right to go out and put something on the ballot to maybe overturn something that you've worked hard on. And then here's a biggie for you. I don't know if we have any electeds on the call at all today, but that's it. I'm out. Once I put pay-as-you-throw, they're going to vote me out of office. We're not trying to make light of these fears and say that they don't exist and that they don't have real impact. But in order for us to be successful in thinking about this model, you have to put them out there to be able to properly deal with them. And so how do we do this? We put it through one of these four categories, and we can pretty much handle anything that comes our way. Good planning, good communication, certainly good execution, and then really important is commitment down the road. So what I did is I kind of took the previous fears and I tried to put them in one of these buckets. But you might have a different look at this, but they all do somehow make it into one of these buckets that we can implement a solution for. So yeah, okay, what are these kinds of solutions that we're talking about in these categories? So if you look down the list here, planning, we have our technical assistance grant that we offer at MassDEP, which I'll talk about later. Here's another big one. Form a cross-functional team that's made up of residents, elected official, municipal staff. Get a lot of people on board early talking about this openly in the community. Don't overcomplicate things. Maybe kind of hitch the pay-as-you-throw trailer to another wagon of something that's equally has like a lot of the same goals, but you might be doing it already, like climate action plan or zero waste plan. And let's go down to communication, frequent and persistent messaging. You can never talk too much about this. Conduct a lot of webinars, open meetings, discuss these things in person, Zoom, and just like let your residents vent, right? Let them say the most ridiculous comments in the world, and then you'll also get the really good gold too, that you know what to deal with. So you really hear from folks, and if you do them often enough, you're never going to get that complaint that it was something that was just thrown at them or slipped under the rug or done behind closed doors. And then on the execution side, if you do get to the point of pay-as-you-throw, there's some really good things you can do for a successful program. And that would be like making your transition easy for the residents. Tons of communication, well-planned, great literature mailed to people's houses. And then as you go through the pay-as-you-throw, warning first and education before you do enforcement. And then, let's talk about that political thing. You may want to put this together in a non-election year. If that's something that really drives you, if that fear is legit and you want to do that, take it off the table. And then use some grant funding too, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, on the commitment side of things, put this as an ordinance or a bylaw, put it in your hauling contract, and just remember, this too shall pass, right? Anything that seems like the end of the world when we have change in our lives, eventually it just becomes back burner, especially if it is a really solid plan like this. And we believe strongly in it. We believe eventually residents, even the cranky ones, are going to come along and understand why it's so important. So at this point, Kathy, if you wouldn't mind launching our second and final poll question for this webinar.
You can see the concerns from residents is the greatest concern. And then a variety of other concerns going down the list. So we will retain those and keep them in mind. Thank you very much for responding.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Okay, so let's kick right back into this presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Missy to talk about some success stories.
Hi, my colleagues have just discussed the many important aspects of pay-as-you-throw, and I'm here to tell you about a handful of municipalities utilizing the many different options of pay-as-you-throw that were used to create a just right program for their community. Next slide, Ron. So the first one we're going to talk about is Dartmouth. Dartmouth's program started in 2007. They use a curbside program and a drop-off program, and they use PAYT bags only. They have approximately 12,000 households, and 87% of the households use the municipal trash service. They allow up to 4 family units with no condos or apartments meeting the criteria. Their average trash tonnage is 5,530, and they have a 21 per household, 21 pounds per household weight per week, and that is approximately a 33-gallon PAYT bag. And how they pay for their program, they use the funds from the PAYT bags. They also have an annual fee of $90, and there's a transfer station visit fee of $10 per visit. And what's kind of unique about Dartmouth is that they use municipal employees to collect the trash, and that they have their own landfill with the city of New Bedford. And you can see here their orange trash bags being dumped into their own landfill. Next slide, Ron. Harvard started in 2019. They have drop-off only. They use bags and punch cards. They have a little bit over 2,000 households, and 64% of the households use the municipal trash program. And how it works is that households with a transfer station sticker, that's including condos and apartments, can use the transfer station. Their trash tonnage is 597 tons, and that comes out to a whopping 18 pounds per household, which is fabulous. They pay their program using the PAYT bags and a transfer station access fee of $130 per year. And what's kind of unique about their program is they have this new program called Dump Dollars. And Dump Dollars is basically created from the old-fashioned tag system and that many transfer stations use or used, and modern digital payment systems. This allows residents to go online and pay an exact amount for a specific item and get a printed ticket for that item to be dropped off the station. They don't need to deal with tickets or tags or anything like that. So it's kind of a great way of technology and tradition. Next slide, Ron. So Longmeadow started their program in 2006. They are a curbside program, and they use 35-gallon carts with the overflow bags, which you can see in the picture there, the blue arrow. And they have about 5,800 households, And this is a whopping 96% of households use that program. They allow up to 3 family units, condos, and apartments that meet the criteria. Their trash tonnage is a little bit over 3,000 tons, and their trash tonnage the weekly trash pounds are 22 pounds per household. They pay with their program using PAYT bags, taxes, and a transfer station access fee. The other unique thing about Longmeadow is that they've gone out to bid several times and have chosen different haulers, and they've all been successful. So changing your hauler is not really a big scary thing with the program. Next slide, Ron. Malden. Malden's a really unique unicorn here. In Malden, PAYT started in 2008 with bags only. Again, they modified their needs to meet the needs of their residents. And in 2021, they created this unique program where they still collect curbside, but they have 35-gallon carts with residents putting PAYT bags in them. Or they have another type of system where the annual sticker is put on a 35-gallon municipal issued cart. And they also allow for overflow bags, PAYT overflow bags. They have approximately 25,000 households, and 68% of those eligible use the municipal program. They allow up to 6 family units, condos, and apartments meeting the criteria. Trash tonnage is 11,631 tons, and their weekly trash per household is 27 pounds. The program is paid for using the PAYT by Blue Bag or the cart sticker. And again, what is unique about this program is residents can choose whether to just have a 35-gallon cart and put a sticker on it and use their regular old bags, or they can use the municipal provided cart with the PAYT bags in it. And they still get overflow bags. So they really get a lot of choices in Malden. Next slide, please. And in Shrewsbury, this was implemented in 2008. This is a curbside program, PAYT bags. And I was actually one of the residents that were involved in getting PAYT passed in the town. So I've heard all those political excuses. The household total is we have approximately over 13,000 households, and about 87% of residents use that program that are allowed to. They use up to 4 family units, condos, and apartments meeting the criteria. Our trash tonnage is 5,862 tons, and our trash tonnage per week, our trash pounds per week is 20 pounds. The program is paid for by the PAYT bags and the tax base only. What's unique is that we have no municipal recycling center. So any of our recycling for larger items or things actually comes from residents and nonprofits who hold fundraisers or collection events. Next slide, Ron. And there's a few others, just little tidbits and facts, but some of the information that we wanted to highlight that is actually kind of important is the highest documented transfer station participation is in Windsor with 99%. The first 3 bin system were for sorting, where you have a cart for trash, a cart for recycling, and a cart for compost, was in Hamilton in 2012. So thanks, Hamilton, for being the first one to kick us off on that one. And then the other really important information is we're still getting new communities like yourself who are implementing PAYT. So our newest community was Plimpton, who became a PAYT member in 2023. Thank you, Ron. And back to Ron.
All right, thank you so much, Missy. Those are great deep dives. Hopefully attendees could see some kind of parallel between their communities and one that you saw there. So we're going to wrap this up by just giving you the conclusion of what we've learned today, some next steps. I'm going to talk about some grants that are available. But key here is I always want folks to be considering that you're somewhere on the path to pay-as-you-throw. In fact, just by attending this webinar, frankly, you're already there. So, you know, whether or not you like it, you're on the pay-as-you-throw path, right? And don't worry, we're not going to share all your attendee lists with everybody else. We know that you're here for the right reasons. So let's first talk about what we think is kind of the most powerful and definitely our highest recommended grant program, and that's for our technical assistance grant. It gives you 80 hours of a dedicated in-kind technical assistance from your municipal assistance coordinator. So you've got 3 of them here on this call today, but the state of Massachusetts is cut up into different regions, and we can share with the group after, you know, how to contact your MAC if you're not already abundantly familiar with who that is. But when you get to this point where you're saying you really are strongly considering implementing pay-as-you-throw, and especially if you want to take care of some of the larger grants that we have available for pay-as-you-throw, we do require that this technical assistance grant be something that that you move forward with, and it's really for good reason. Is because what we found is those programs that are kind of implemented with haste, not a lot of planning. When you're sort of out there on your own, you've never done this before, you don't have a great list of examples and a good solid methodology, it can be really difficult to have a successful program. So our MACs have done this before. They've worked with other communities to implement these plans, but also, you know, more than just the implementation plan, there's going to be things along the way, like some of the things that we talked about in our strategies, which are like conducting public meetings, providing outreach materials, delivering data to the decision makers, or even making presentations to them to kind of really get them to come on board. So that if you come away with just about, you know, probably the number one thing, we really want you to consider applying for this technical assistance grant to move you just a little bit or a lot closer to that goal of pay-as-you-throw. So once you've completed that pay-as-you-throw technical assistance grant, we do have funding that's available, and it's based on household serves, and it's actually a maximum of up to $300,000. And the program funds can be used for less than or equal to 35-gallon trash carts, outreach and education materials, having a program coordinator, and then some other approved expenses. So briefly, with the categories and what we allow for, we have for new drop-off, new pay-as-you-throw program that's a drop-off community, up to $10 per household. New curbside programs. Some of those, we talked about the different implementation methods, and we have grants that are appropriately sized for which type of plan that you want to implement. So there's definitely some funding out there available depending on which one you choose. And then for those that are on the upgrade, meaning that you're already a pay-as-you-throw program, we do have eligibility. Like Malden was an example that was used where pay-as-you-throw grant funds were used to upgrade an existing program. So what we really want to drive home here are some action items you can do. When you leave this call from here, we really don't want this topic to die. We want it to be always discussed. Like I said, always be somewhere on this pay-as-you-throw arc. What are some things you can do? On the left side, we have things you can do right away. On the right side, things that you can plan to do later. So research your own situation. What are your contract details? I don't know if you guys want to just a quick show of hands. For the folks that are online here, raise your hand if you have seen and read your hauler contract. I'll give just a second for that. And while we're doing that, I'll move on. But you know, do you have a budget for solid waste? You know, how many households have you established that data? So we're getting our hand raises there. I don't know if it's folks that aren't responding and didn't want to respond, but it looks like a low percentage, and that's not surprising. They are not exactly, you know, this isn't exactly an exciting read, but it's something that you really need to get your hands around before you can move to that next step, because you got to know what the nuances are with the contract. Reach out to your MACs. Please, if you haven't done so already, develop that relationship. Get that first step. Let them know you've got some interest in this. As things come out, like this webinar, like other information that might be helpful, they're going to share that with you. The link is there, and again, we'll share. Maybe Rachel, if you wouldn't mind sharing the link to the Municipal Assistance Coordinator contact list, that would be great. And as we just talked about, apply for that technical assistance grant specifically for pay-as-you-throw. Our tech assistance grant is available for other subject matters too, but we're just talking about pay-as-you-throw here today. Get yourself on that list, apply for that grant, get yourself on that path, and then research our website under the pay-as-you-throw section, because we have tons of information, great, all our data, the charts that we shared today, case studies, endless amounts of information for you to do your own research. And then in the long term, keep talking about pay-as-you-throw. Every budget cycle, just be that pain in the neck person that always brings that subject up, right? Where are we? Is it in there? Because we know it for the most part, it's going to be really difficult for us to get this with our first, we're not going to hit a home run in our first at bat. So we definitely want to always be up there swinging though. And like I said in an earlier slide, form a committee of officials. This is a nice way of kind of saying, like, we're in the exploratory phase. We're not saying pay-as-you-throw is coming, but listen, we need to look into it. We've got budget concerns. We've got, waste concerns. We want to see where this goes. So if you form that committee and you start to gather information, again, that conversation is going to start to crop up in other areas you didn't even know. Your Facebook groups, people will start the scuttlebutt. They'll start talking about it. You'll see folks at town meetings and, city council meetings start to talk about it. It bubbles it to the surface. It makes it not a taboo topic to talk about. And then capital planning, if you're thinking about carts, if you're thinking about going big on this, that's going to be something you're going to want to start planning, at least a year in advance. And then, like Julia talks about, stay on top of that hauler contract. If you're coming up on a year where you need to renew, and you have even just an inkling of pay-as-you-throw, you have to get that bubbled up to the surface. It has to be talked about, and you may want to structure your contract plans based on that. And then again, now I'll drive that home again. Stay in touch with your MACs. Regularly update them on your pay-as-you-throw status. This is really helpful in particular because I work with the MACs as the grant manager as well. We see folks all the time saying, yeah, hey, such and such city, they asked me, they're kind of sniffing around, they're thinking about pay-as-you-throw. That's useful information because we know then we can direct more information your way. We can give you that assistance. So stay in touch with them. Let your intentions be known. And again, please, if you just come away with this, don't let this concept die on the vine. Please always discuss and take some of these actions that we've talked about here. And with that, we are at the point of our presentation where we definitely want to respond to questions. And that's where Rachel's going to come into the picture. And Rachel, I don't know if you wanted to maybe do some of the ones that were were put in the chat first, and then while you're doing that, folks that prefer to ask their question aloud could maybe raise their hand. Does that sound fair?
That sounds good. We did get a few in the chat. The first says, our community does not have a municipal trash hauling system. Residents have to hire their own haulers. How do we make this transition? There's opposition to a tax-based system. So it's like how do you go from a subscription service to a municipal program?
Okay. So I think first of all, again, I'll drive home that tech assistance part of it. This is the kinds of questions that you're asking are great ones. Going from any program to another, as much as you might think you're unique in your journey, it's one of our municipal assistance coordinators, by the way, they work collaboratively. So if they haven't seen the situation, they're going to collaborate with their colleagues. And we kind of hive mind this process. So the really tough ones or the complicated ones, we really try to get our arms around it and give you the best suggestions to move forward. I don't know if any of my colleagues.
Yeah, I don't know if you can
Julia.
see, Ron, both myself and Irene has her hand up too, so I'll start. And it sounds like you don't have a municipal program at all, and it's fully subscription, private subscription. So you could go a number of ways, and you say that it wouldn't be popular to use the tax base. So you could do a system where you set up like an enterprise account and you do a municipal contract, and then people pay an annual fee, a trash and recycling fee, to use that program. You could also do a subscription program, and it could be subscription or it could be all in. So there are a variety of ways you could do this. If you do a subscription program, you would probably have people subscribing annually. It's more expensive. It'll probably come out cheaper than what individuals are paying for their individual subscription with a private hauler, but they'd probably be paying more than if you had a straight municipal program. So there are a lot of different options, and like Ron had said, is that working with your municipal assistance coordinator, you can figure out what the best system is, both politically, that you could get passed, and also have real value for your residents.
Irene, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so I'm Irene Congdon. I'm the Central MAC, and I have 75 communities, of which 19 are private subscription communities. So I've been working on this issue for over 20 years, and it is a hard thing to get through, but some communities like Lunenburg did it. They were able, when their school was got paid off, they were able to sneak a $60 per household into the tax base. And it really does not seem like a lot, but by having the taxes pay a portion of the collection, and then the pay as you throw bag pays the rest, they've been able to have a very successful program. It's very hard with everybody's budget so tight to do that. So as Julia said, to have a town contract. And what we've done is, because we don't know how many households will participate, is we do like a per household number. Right now, just so people know, is the costs are crazy. In Central Mass, they're paying about $700 to $800 per household to get trash and recycling picked up. No bulky items, no nothing, just a 96-gallon trash container. If you have a town contract, that can be $300. And so, or less, depending on the type of contracts that you have. And then you could have something in the middle where the resident pays a flat rate, and then they have the pay as you throw bags with that. And that could be working with your hauler. It could be working with your cable, your electric company, and there's ways to get the money being taken out. So it's not as a big, heavy lift of administration like it used to be, because everybody's doing a lot of bills online. So there are things that are working out. I do also have 2 communities that are very small communities that connected with an intermunicipal agreement with their neighbor that is pay as you throw. So that was a different kind of model that has just been started with small communities, so that they can have residents utilize the pay as you throw program next door.
Thank you.
Thank you. So another question, we got a couple in the chat. So, Ron, a big area of pushback is the argument that PAYT is unfair to larger households. What is some successful messaging for that?
Sure. Just to clarify, when they say larger households, I'm assuming maybe a multifamily is what they may be talking about. Or are
They
talking
might
about
be
number of kids or number.
They might be thinking like larger families, like
Yeah.
if you are a family that has like 4 kids.
Yeah,
Children.
so I mean, I'm gonna launch that water bill, example back at, because I have this challenge. I have 3 children, and none of the 3 of them are into short showers, if you know what I mean. So we definitely have these challenges. But what's interesting is, while that has kind of a black and white approach, I think what was talked about earlier, and Julia talked about it, is diversion of other materials has a huge impact on this. So regardless of household size, if you have more diversion strategies that you've implemented at your household level, it can make a gigantic difference. And as an example, I do live in Malden. We are a pay-as-you-throw community. I have 5 members in my household, and we have a 35-gallon cart. I have not used an overflow bag but for 2 times in the last 6 months, and they were both like holidays. Well, it was a Christmas, New Year's area, and it was Thanksgiving. And now even further, I've just put in food waste subscription into my house, and that has changed things drastically. So when you combine all those diversion strategies, really, I think that's probably a really good way to look at the larger households and how they can reduce. I mean, there's the other obvious stuff, right? About just having, helping residents have those discussions with their families about how to reduce. And some of that just comes out of recycling education, right? Maybe just folks that may not be as, incentivized to recycle. And that's one of the things that was not talked about today, was how pay-as-you-throw, just by the nature of having skin in the game, impacts those behaviors like you've never seen them before. So all of a sudden you get folks that become passionate recyclers because they were kind of nudged in that direction. So they start to learn, this is a pain in the neck. Oh, I'm paying $4 a week, or I'm paying, $10 a week that I never used to have to pay. What can we do differently? Maybe those cans that I used to throw out, they got to go in the recycling because it's not going to be counted in the bags. So I think education and outreach is key, and really adopting some of those diversion techniques can really help. So I hope that answers your question.
Kathy Mirza has her hand raised. I don't know if she wants to add something.
Yeah, just to concur with everything that Ron just shared about diversion, and then one other thought about the messaging relative to large families, because that is a common issue that can come up, and the notion that it could be a burden for larger families that generate more. I guess I would say is consider kind of flipping that upside down and think about small families. Think about who the demographics, who the folks are in your community. Do you have a lot of seniors who are on a fixed income? Do you have smaller households that might be bearing, frankly, a disproportional amount of the costs of a program? So if they could be currently subsidizing the larger waste generators, and that's a less fair situation, really. That's an inequity that I would hope that folks will consider in the messaging of it. I understand it can be politically challenging. I think we all do understand that. But just to consider that most communities are going to have a range of different household sizes and types, and the burdens should be really shared more equitably. And that's why Pay-as-you-throw is such a sound program in that respect. Thanks.
And I'm going to jump in really quick just to give a time check. We have arrived at the official end of 11 o'clock a.m., but as promised, we are here definitely to wrap up all these questions. So, as far as the team goes, I think thumbs up from the team. You guys are still good on your plans, but we're here to answer all these questions. So again, if you can stay, great. We'll keep answering these questions.
Okay, we've been able to answer some of them in the chat. I don't know if this is a non sequitur, but is there any policy, and Kathy might be best here, but are there policy initiatives in the works, such as packaging stewardship, like Maine's? I guess they're trying to think like policy initiatives to reduce packaging and reduce trash.
I mean, there's legislation about packaging producer responsibility. It's not something that we touch on directly, our group. We cannot advocate directly for those sorts of that type of legislation, but it's out there. I'm hearing that it may not really be getting a whole lot of steam at the moment, but there's a lot of education that's happening, is my understanding. So, that is something that could, should it go forward at some point in the future? We don't know. We don't have any crystal ball about that. That would certainly, if it were to, as in some other states, it would affect or impact the cost of managing recyclables directly. The thing about pay-as-you-throw programs is it really is about reducing your trash. Those costs are not going down. And we have a capacity crunch in Massachusetts. So what we're seeing is more and more waste being shipped out of state, unfortunately, because of our capacity constraints. And we could, if we were really recycling more effectively across the state, we could free up some of the existing capacity that we have here in Massachusetts to be able to manage it at home and perhaps even in a more cost-effective way. So these programs are really more about the trash side of the equation than the recycling side. It's kind of a long-winded response, though, but hope that's helpful for you.
So another question that came up that some people have responded to was about particular for curbside communities, have curbside communities that implement pay-as-you-throw programs experience reduced contamination in their recycling. We did have a couple munis here respond that no, they did not see that correlation, but I don't know if you want to expand on that, Ron.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely track that. I think, and actually, that probably should have been in my under the monsters under the bed slide about contamination and how it might affect it. Folks doing either wish cycling because they know that they're going to save money, or getting like a little bit more cavalier about it. I think that from what I've seen, it's not an impact that would be prohibitive. In other words, it's not. I don't think we've seen a situation in a municipality where it's thrown recycling into a tailspin. Certainly by no measure. You definitely will get some modification of that, but it's actually really important. It's a good time to talk about it. Is one of those takeaways that we can put on there that I didn't include is work with your haulers now to understand what your contamination rates are. So if you're headed in this direction, you'll know what it is. Not a lot of folks take advantage of audits that they can do through their haulers. So if you don't know what your percentage is now, that's a great cue to maybe go out and learn that. But overall, I don't think that's something that we consistently see as as a byproduct of implementation of pay-as-you-throw. And by the way, not something that cannot be rectified, with the proper amount of education after the fact.
I think, so the overall understanding of issues with trash and recycling is truly limited to the folks that are already involved. Has the DEP considered a campaign explaining the need for reduction and best practices? So I think more of like a statewide education campaign is what they're asking about, specifically for waste diversion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to kick this over to Kathy too, but
Yeah.
we've Recycle Smart MA, I think, is probably the biggest one that we can point to, and Beyond the Bin. Those are two really powerful ways of just basically helping residents understand what can and can't be recycled. But I understand the nature, I think, of the question, which is that it seems like what they're getting at, I think it's Wendy that asked the question, is like, this is for the people who are just checked out, right? The folks that like really it wasn't in their face. We found out that, when we run these statewide initiatives, they definitely have an impact, but there is really nothing more powerful than you as municipalities doing things at a local level to communicate what it is that your changes are. So, and the reason why is, I mean, we can definitely bang the drum for recyclables like we do with our Recycle Smart tool, because we know overall what is recyclable and how it's recyclable. But in terms of the specifics to what your town or city does, that's where it really becomes critical for you to just message over and over. We actually had a discussion in a staff meeting yesterday. We like to look at the whole rule of 7 when it comes to marketing, that some folks really, things don't sink in until they've heard it for the 7th time. We know that a lot of our cities and towns have access to social media, local newspapers, and to this point, we are planning a meeting coming soon. We'll give you the information as soon as we know when it's coming, but to actually go over some communication strategies that might be really effective and help you get messaging out on what your, like what your program is now, and then more importantly on the pay-as-you-throw side, when and if that gets implemented. And lastly, when pay-as-you-throw is implemented, trust me when I say this, everybody's going to pay attention, because there's nothing worse than not paying attention, throwing your white bag out on the curb, and then everybody else has these magical colored bags that, where did they come from? All of a sudden you have to pay attention. And we feel strongly that at that moment is when you have to be ready with that messaging. And we've allowed for grant funds to be used for things like advertising, social media advertising, which is a new one now in our spending categories. You know, local, be it signs, pound them as much as you can with this good information at implementation, and I think folks will really get it.
Another comment that came in order to make a program like this most feasible, with 35-gallon carts, having curbside food waste collection would be helpful, but this is very difficult for low-income munis, whether the muni is paying or if they're looking for residents to pay via subscription. Is there any more help that can be offered by DEP?
Yeah, we do have grant programs available for food waste diversion. You can use your recycling dividends program funds. In some cases, a community, I'll speak for my own, here in Malden, we used RDP funds to purchase starter kits for a composting, as Julie talked about, having a preferred vendor, so one that's committing to collecting in your region. And then giving them some kind of funding initially, like a starter kit, which would be buying a bin and some bags to get them going. And yes, they will have to bear the burden of the subscription cost, which for the lower income communities can be a tough sell. But one thing that's great is a lot of these preferred vendors will give you tiered pricing, so that as you get more and more folks to be the early adopters, the more the program grows, they actually will lower the subscription price and get it down to be more reasonably priced. But if your municipality wants to kind of go full force with organics curbside collection, we also have a full grant program that you can take advantage of, that we have information on our website for. And I don't know if anyone and my colleagues wants to add to that.
I just had my hand up to suggest, like, for communities like New Bedford, and perhaps there are others here on the call, particularly if you're an environmental justice community, but not only if you're an environmental justice community, there's really substantial federal grant funding out there to support some larger scale waste reduction types of programs. And they have, with the bipartisan infrastructure law, much deeper pockets than we do at DEP in terms of the grant funds. Certainly we can walk with any community about walk through it with you to discuss opportunities that we have through our grants specifically for your community. I see Marissa's note about agree, because there is so much substantial funding there. One of the things that may not exist right now, but I must say is a little bit on my wish list, is I'd love to see more grant writers out there. And it could be using RDP funds to bring in a grant writer to help with some of these complicated grants. I imagine in some cases it could be well worth the spend. Just a thought for those larger scale programs. And I know that communities like New Bedford are eager to really take it to the next level and conserve capacity of Crapo Hill. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. I
Um,
don't know if you want to get into it, Rachel. It seemed like you had some answers for Marissa, but I think it might be worth talking. That's a great
yes,
conversation.
so there was questions about the grant. I don't know if you want to pull that slide up. But there was a question about, you know, for the different levels of funding for the grant. And the $30 per household is for the 35-gallon carts. And the question was, is this like specifically for the cart only, or is it like PAYT bags, like in addition to the cart, like overflow? And I had responded to this, that it's for the 35-gallon trash cart itself, because the $30 recognizes the investment that the municipality is like making in that program change. I don't know the current price of the carts on state contract, but the $30 pays for more than half. But you know, they're expensive. So that's why that amount is higher than, say, you know, the $10 or the $20 per household for just the bags. It's because the cart is more expensive and we recognize the investment. So if you get carts, you know, the expectations you're gonna use them and you're gonna keep the program going. And it's just for 35-gallon carts. There was a question about what if the municipality wants to do variable size carts.
I think also the other one I wanted to address in this thread was how Marissa talked about, you know, like if a 6-family household, that's a lot of carts. I agree. That is a lot of carts.
Yep.
There's no question about it. And I think it's a good opportunity to say, these are the types of questions and these are the types of issues that residents and administrators are going to launch at you to tell you that it can't be done, right? They're going to lob these over and say, there's no way somebody's going to want, you know, whatever it is, 12 carts sitting on their property. We don't have room. We're dense. I can say, because I actually, before this, I had a role, I worked for the city of Malden and I was part of the implementation of that cart program. And that's exactly the types of things we heard. The answer is we got through it. And we also learned that discussing the edge cases like these 6-family houses is probably not as productive as looking at like what the lion's share of your housing stock is. But with that said, we do know there are some densely populated communities out there with a lot of 3 families, a lot of 6 families. This is why we really strongly recommend that you go through that process of the technical assistance grant. This is how you hash those things out early, and you can come up with really tried and tested solutions that other communities have done. Like I said, I'd be happy to share with whoever you want my experience implementing 35-gallon carts in Malden, where we did provide carts all the way up to 6-family households, and how it did work. So you're not in this alone. That's why working with your MAC and doing that technical assistance is really important.
I think that's all in the chat. Julia included a link with some federal funding grant opportunities.
Yeah, Upton and Seekonk would be other examples. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, we have larger carts with bags inside.
I just put in the chat,
This
solid waste infrastructure for recycling grant is going to come up this summer and fall. And so this website has boot camps. So I really think it's a fantastic website to help you figure out how to access that federal funding. And they pay for things like carts, all kinds of carts, recycling, and food waste. in food waste programs. So take advantage of it. So the deadline is to sign up for the boot camps is this Friday. So.
And just for clarification, Julie, this boot camp is kind of like teaching the folks how to write a better grant application.
Yeah,
and be
exactly.
successful?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Because
Um,
I didn't want to do anything that required a workout, so I was just making sure that I wasn't getting into something I
Right.
had no intention of doing. I think we have a hand raised from
yeah,
Wendy.
Wendy.
I'm gonna unmute. I'm gonna ask. There we
Hi
go.
there.
Hi, Wendy.
So I'm in a very unique community, which is tiny. We don't even have space to have, bins for cardboard recycling if it doesn't fit in your bin in town. Excuse me. And so we've implemented some interesting strategies to try and get to our 30 by 30, as I keep calling it. And anything that does not fit in your bin proper, we've kind of co-opted an overthrow. It's pay as you throw overflow. So anything that does not fit in your 64-gallon bin that is collected weekly, you need to purchase a bag for. That's our first step towards it. I'd really love to see maybe in the fall or the next one you do, how maybe we could put out some kind of poll and ask some folks, what were the steps that you took to get people a little bit more interested and understanding the process of why pay as you throw is beneficial, and how maybe look at the more successful communities and ask them what their steps were, like you were in Malden, Ron. That would be really beneficial to those of us who are in our tiny little departments to move forward and keep pushing. My earlier comment about the education, people are shocked when I start expressing to them that the wheelbarator in Saugus, whatever its name is now, it's already past its life expectancy. It should already be capped. And we only have 2 years. Common folks that don't have a connection to this kind of interest don't seem to understand that we are at a pivotal turning point, that it's from this point on, we're at the point of no return now. And that's more what I meant about the education. How do we maybe come up with, for those people like me who are very vocal, community, social media, in personal and professionally, how do we maybe get that to more town administrators and start spreading that so that it becomes a priority in conversation a little bit more? I think that's where I was getting to. If I've got a 65-year-old, he's like, I've been putting my stuff out every day since, I was 12, and they take everything. And now they're fighting that back. So that's the kind of thing that I was kind of hedging more toward in that comment.
I think I love everything you said. That's so, and I like the idea too of getting, more of a poll from the more successful communities about how I think what you're getting at is how do we, the terrible analogy, the boil the frog, analogy, right? Of how we warm you up to this concept, without having rebellion. And I think, we will talk about this internally about if there's something that we can maybe do on the state level. We'll definitely take that back with us and as an action item to discuss. So I love the suggestion. Thank you. And the other thing I would say is, unfortunately, no matter how much it's talked about and how much maybe fear, because I think we have like a really, really great example that's before us called climate change, that no matter how much we seem to tell folks that things are really, really difficult, again, it's priorities in folks' life. They just maybe not on the curve of accepting that yet. But what I will say is at the local level, when you start incorporating this discussion in a multifaceted approach, and you start taking things, I'll see if I can hit the slide way back, that I had, which is, remember this, right? No matter what your motivation is, pay as you throw has a little bit from kind of all aspects. It has administration, it has, and I didn't even put it on here, but not just financial and economic, I mean, a financial and environmental, but also health department too, like in the containerization of trash and reducing trash and litter overall. So there's a lot of stakeholders and folks that have some kind of like, skin in this game. And what I would really recommend is if you get that get that committee going, and you start to talk about these things, especially around budget time. So we're in our municipal budget cycle. Most budgets are at this point probably referred out to their, to their governing bodies. But like somewhere in the somewhere in the late fall is when you're going to start to see department heads do presentations to the councils and the executive branch to say what their financial concerns are. I'd say lay this out as a presentation every year and say, trash our haulers, our wheel abraders at capacity, because again, you can talk specifically about your situation. You don't have to compare people to the whole state. You can say, look, our hauler contract's coming up. It's got 2 years left. These are the prices that we're seeing out there. Our disposal facilities are on the brink of maybe closing or sending us elsewhere. If you start to beat that drum on an annual basis to your budget subcommittees, trust me, folks will respond. And I think it's an effective way of doing it. And I got another hand raise. We got a physical hand raise. Alan, if you want to unmute.
Oops. Am I
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay. Alan Robinson from Falmouth. First off, are your slides going to be available for us? It's a great set of slides.
Thank you. Definitely will. We'll put it to the same email trail, and by the way, we'll also upload this to our YouTube account at MassDEP. So yeah, both will be available.
Great. Second, we're a town with curbside collection, and we're giving our Solid Waste Advisory Committee is giving some thought to pay as you throw, and the challenges. Is there a town, maybe Malden or others, that developed a plan, a master plan of how this could be done before actually proposing it to the elected officials and others, that we could borrow from that plan or draw from that plan?
Yeah, I can't answer that off the cuff, but I can, if any of my colleagues want to, we can certainly gather that information. But that's the key part of working with your MAC on this one, because if your MAC doesn't have an example, they'll ask other MACs who has great examples of that. But just so I can clarify, you're talking about communities that have like actually formed almost like the equivalent of a holistic business plan and then said, here's like a full package plan. Can we do it?
Yes, more or less, yes.
Yeah, I know we have other communities that are asking us to do that right now, actually. So again, maybe some of our MACs that are still on the call, do you know such a thing, or is this just straight up the TA grant?
We should have examples from other municipalities. Like, I know that we have examples of PowerPoint presentations that have been given to Board of Selectmen and stuff like that. We have implementation plans and proposals. So the MAC, you'll be working with Carrie. She could definitely pull some examples of what other municipalities have done. So you're not like reinventing the wheel.
Right. It has to be off Cape because nobody on the Cape has a program like this.
Yeah, so that would be fine. I would just add that that's why we do technical assistance grants, because it's going to be tailored to the program that you're creating. So, we all share bits and pieces of presentations that we do for individual municipalities.
So
Thank you,
Alan,
but thank you. Yep. Hi, Carrie.
hi, how are you?
Good.
The three that are on the Cape are obviously Drop Off, Brewster, Sandwich, and Wellfleet. And then Martha's Vineyard has a curbside and a drop off situation like Falmouth. It's just a little bit smaller, but it serves all 6 of the towns. So we'd probably have to go off Cape for some more thorough examples, but they do exist in my district currently.
Thanks.
I don't see any more hands raised. I don't see any more questions, and we are almost at 11:30. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time, including my colleagues who stayed on an extra half hour. Really appreciate that. But any last second urgent questions, but also again, feel free. I think my email is somewhere above me right here, ron.ih.cochran@mass.gov. I'm also listed on the Mac, the list of Macs, because I am a Mac myself. Again, please feel free to reach out to your Macs. Feel free to reach out to me directly via email if you have any follow-up questions. And with that, if there are no other questions, comments, I think we're going to close up shop.